Now, as we always try to do near the end of a sitting period, frontbencher and manager of opposition business, Paul Fletcher, joins us in the studio. Welcome back, Paul. Catastrophic handling of NZYQ, I think was an expression used in the Parliament today. What's the evidence for that? Everyone who has been released is now on bridging visa conditions that the Coalition has agreed to. In what sense catastrophic, or is this just in line with the hyperbole of the week?
Well, not at all. Let's look at what happened here, which was a High Court decision in the case of one individual, NZYQ. We then, when that came down, we then saw several days of no response from the government. The government then said that it was forced to release what was initially some 80 hardened criminals. We knew that amongst them were murderers, rapists, paedophiles and others. That number has kept rising, by the way. So at the start of today, it was 141. Now it's 142. Okay. Now, yes, there are some conditions, but that is because the Coalition pressed for legislation to be introduced in response to this catastrophic development. Labor wasn't going to do that. For 3 days of the previous sitting week, they said no, no, no. On the Thursday morning, they caved. They came forward with legislation. They briefed the opposition 8 a.m. that morning. We said it needs more. We suggested some 6 or 7 additional provisions. Opposition leader Peter Dutton, a former Home Affairs Minister, deployed his expertise, and we facilitated that going through the House in one day. So we did all of that, but if we hadn't done that, things would have been even worse. But there are still things they're trying to fix up.
I don't want to sort of re-prosecute all of this week, but you did ask for more laws, tough laws. The tougher, the better. On Monday, you were given the chance to tighten what I think are effectively loopholes in visa conditions and voted no. I don't want all the ins and outs of it, but was that a tactical blunder for which you paid all week?
No, not at all. We've got a very clear track record, first of all, of being strong on border protection. Every time a coalition government is in power, you see that. Of course, when Labor comes to power, last time Labor in power before this government, 50,000 illegal maritime arrivals. Now, we were shown a new piece of legislation 8 a.m. Monday this week. We're asked to vote on it within a matter of hours. And we said we've got some further matters that we think need to be addressed. They weren't addressed to our satisfaction, and so we voted against it. But of course, we stand ready to engage constructively. Then on a second piece of legislation, the citizenship, so some new powers for the minister to strip the citizenship of somebody who's been convicted of very serious crimes, if that person's a dual citizen, to have their Australian citizenship removed. That legislation passed the House yesterday. We voted for it. It was in the Senate today. We facilitated that being brought on quickly. We've proposed some amendments. We're still waiting to hear the government's position on those. So look, we've been constructive. We've done what we can from opposition to help the government deal with its own catastrophic mismanagement.
All right, let's move on a little. We won't go through all the allegations of protector, of pedophile. And is that something the opposition, though, just briefly, is still seeking some sort of apology for? I think that was a call made by the leader earlier today.
Look, it was pretty disgraceful language, but frankly, it's a ludicrous suggestion to make about Peter Dutton as somebody who has been a policeman. He's had over 20 years in politics. He's got a record which is second to none in standing up for victims of crime, and both in the legislative work he's done and, of course, in his previous work as a policeman. I think it's a deeply offensive thing, but it's also an absolutely ridiculous thing to say.
All right. Well, you might be familiar with our audience, Paul Fletcher. I know they're very keen on parliamentary procedure and what next week might look like. We do have these outstanding preventative detention laws to come from the government. Have you been briefed on how next week will work, how the Senate will deal with that, and is the House, in fact, only coming back for one day next week?
Well, it remains the position that the government has advised us that the House will be back next Thursday. That's in the sitting timetable. You'd recollect that a couple of months ago, the government cancelled a week of sittings to facilitate the Prime Minister having some more overseas travel. And when we complained about that, it highlighted that raised some significant problems. They put in one additional day for the House of Representatives, so they got rid of 4, added 1.
And you're not going to be sitting till Christmas, are you?
Well, that'll again be in the hands of the government, but what we anticipate will happen is some of those bills which are in the Senate, particularly, for example, the citizenship one, The Senate will deal with that over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, as the Senate is sitting for the full week.
Yep.
And then those bills will come back to the House. They'll be open to the House to pass them. We, of course, will engage constructively, as we have continued to do, but we will also, as ever, reserve our right to see the provisions and judge them on their merits.
All right. Many outstanding talking points for the week. One, to select it, because it kind of is in your laneway, the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters. The possibility, it's only to examine this, not to do it, to potentially expand the House up to 200 representatives and another 4 in the Senate. What's wrong with that?
That's a dreadful idea. That's a dreadful idea. You're talking about 53 additional politicians. You go from 151 to 200 in the House, another 4 in the Senate. You're probably looking at another 200 to 250 staffers to support them.
So it's only a cost objection?
Well, when you say only a cost, we've got a cost of living crisis. Australians are doing it tough. This government is splashing money around, wasting money, $450 million on the Prime Minister's vanity voice referendum, $250 million now to monitor criminals who never should have been let out in the first place. And now they're contemplating spending what would be hundreds of millions over a number of years.
Are you prepared to represent an ever-growing number of constituents? I think on average 114,000 people per seat, roughly, on average. That will grow. It won't stop.
I think on any international comparison, the ratio of politicians to people in Australia is a high one. Look, it's an honour to represent the people I do, and I know that every politician, every parliamentarian feels the same way. But I don't think the case has been made, and I think the Australian people are rightly very sceptical of the proposition that what we need right now is more politicians. We strongly disagree with that.
All right, well, you and others will just have to work harder on current demographic trends, apparently. Paul Fletcher, it is only a proposal, though, to be examined, not to be done. I'm not going to say farewell to you either, because it may well be that we talk again next week.